Did we learn anything from the past, like the 1918 Spanish flu, to help fight COVID-19?
Go to Leighton.
I think we did a little bit, to be honest. I think what's different from the 1918 is that we're able to communicate a lot faster with each other. You know, so we've got telephones now, we've got internet. So when it's happening in somewhere else in the world, we're able to tell other people really quickly what's going on and share all that information. Because compared to 1918, everything traveled slowly on the boat. And so it'd be by snail mail that you've received the information. And sometimes the disease might have arrived in the country before anybody knew about it. But today, because we have telephones and the computer and Zoom, when any new diseases pop up, we are able to tell other people what's going on. And that means we can help tell them how to keep themselves safe. So things like you guys have been doing, which is like wearing the mask. When you're sick, you're staying at home so you don't spread the infection. You're covering your mouths. You're staying away from other people if you're sick or if they're sick. So those kind of things have helped us with, you know, preventing the spread of disease. And then now we've also got a vaccine, so we can tell people about the vaccine. So the vaccine is a medicine that we give you to help your body to be able to fight the infection. Okay, and we didn't have that for the Spanish flu, the 1918 flu. And so we're able to tell everyone about what's available to help protect themselves and to protect their families. So we can tell, look, there's a vaccine that can help you. And then also things like staying at home when you're sick, so you don't spread the infection, and wearing the mask and washing your hands to help keep you all safe.
Now, I know your time is precious and you've introduced kind of the vaccine, and we do have quite a few questions about the vaccine. Is there anything else that you would particularly like our community to know from your experience, your body of knowledge? And I'm not sure who else can talk about the vaccine, but that's where we're going next.
Okay. I think in general, I like to say to people that vaccines are not new. Most of us all know how vaccines work. We've had, you know, childhood immunizations for a while now, you know, for decades, and we know that they work to help prevent disease and infection. So some of the ones that some of your children may have already had are like your measles, mumps, rubella you have before you come to school. You would have had some hepatitis vaccines. You would have had polio and tetanus. So you've already had lots of like vaccines when you're like babies and then before you came to school. So vaccines are not new. So what vaccines do is that they help your own body to be able to fight infection, okay? So when we get viruses that can make us really sick, most of the time it's your own body that has to fight it off. Now, some of us can fight that infection on their own, okay, and get well. But some of us, we get really, really sick and unwell. And as doctors, we can't tell which people will be able to fight it off on their own or which people get very sick. And like I said before, we know that these new viruses can spread very quickly amongst a lot of people really fast. And so that means we get bigger numbers of people who can get really unwell and sick, but then we'll also get lots of people who will be fine. Now, a good example of vaccines, I always like to give an example, is, you know, the measles vaccine, okay? It is a disease that if you get it, you can be very sick and unwell, but there's not any medicines that we can give you. And, you know, we don't have measles in New Zealand. It's not natural. It can only come to New Zealand from overseas on the plane. Just like the virus, the COVID virus can only come to New Zealand from overseas. So when we're all protected and all get vaccinated, we stop preventing the spread of some diseases, not all of them, but some of the diseases. So your parents may remember the measles outbreaks that's happened in New Zealand. And when they've occurred, they've mainly happened in those communities where there's been no one vaccinated with that vaccine. So in 2019, we saw outbreaks of measles in Auckland, that went to West Auckland. And then we also saw it go overseas to the islands because they had a period of time where they didn't vaccinate the people for the measles. And we had an outbreak there. But what people forgot is measles also went to Tonga, Fiji, but because they were really vaccinated really well, high populations, there was no outbreak. We didn't see anything on TV or the news. So it didn't go anywhere else. And so we know that vaccines work. They're not 100%, but they, we do know they do help us because they help us to fight off the infection. So vaccines are just one tool. The social distance is another tool. And so we hope, because we already know what vaccines do, this is all the COVID vaccine does. Exactly like the vaccines that your parents have seen before or you've had before as a child. Vaccines help your own body to be able to fight off the disease if it sees that infection in real life. I'm hoping that explains it okay. Sorry.
Thank you, Hina. I think we might, because I know you've got to leave as well. If there's no dying questions, Stephanie, I'm not sure if there were any. I mean, I'm sure the nurses will be able to carry on with that anyways.
Yeah.
Hina, was there anything else you wanted to add, or have you kind of covered your main points?
One more thing, just about the science behind it all and things like that. Just like the flu vaccine, when it first came out, it started in just adults and vulnerable older people. But as we saw that it worked really well, we were able to lower the age of giving the flu vaccine. So now you can have the flu vaccine in babies as young as 6 months old to all the way over 100 years old. So from the science that I know about the vaccine, we should be able to vaccinate all ages really with this Pfizer vaccine. Okay, but what's happened and what slowed us down is because as doctors, we have to see the evidence that it's working. So we're lucky here in New Zealand, so we can watch when everyone else is being vaccinated and see what happens because we share all that information, okay? And so we have seen that the Pfizer vaccine has started to be given in younger and younger children. So even in New Zealand, we started at 16 and over, and then we're dropping it down to 12. In the future, we're going to probably drop it down again. So you guys at school, will be getting offered if you want to have the vaccine as well, okay? That's probably the only other thing to add.
Awesome. Malo Pito Hina for joining us today. Thank you for your time. I know you're still in the clinic, so yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
Moe?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm Molly. Can Dr. Hina, in case the child has a question about what the vaccine is made of, if doctor can explain before she leaves for the day?
So the ingredients for the vaccine it's quite simple. Ooh, I'm going to make it sound very simple just to make it easier. Okay. So the main ingredients in the vaccines are sugars, salts, fat, and protein. Okay. And so those things, a lot of them we find also in our own body. Okay. So all of us have a little bit of fat in us. All of us have sugar for our energy. We might eat it or we might have it made in our bodies. We also have salts. So some of us think of salt on our food, but we actually also have salt inside our body as well. And protein. So proteins are muscles, So I've made it sound very simple when I describe it like that, but that's the main grouping of the ingredients. But as you know, sugar comes in lots of forms. You get sugar in your sugar you put in your cup of tea. You get sugar in the form of, like, say, honey, so there's different forms of it. But I'm just giving you the simple overall pictures of the ingredients. And so we don't expect any, huge problems with things that are very similar to what we also already have in our body and that we eat. But some, all of us are a little bit different. and there's no perfect medicines and no perfect vaccines. So we do know that some people can have reactions, okay? And that's why when you get your medicines or when you get injected at the clinic, your doctors will always watch you to look out for whether you're going to have any reactions or side effects. And then we also tell your parents that if you have any of these, common problems when you go home, or if you're not well like you normally are, that you need to let your doctor know or your nurse know, even if it's a day later or a few days later, because we record all this information so we can tell people again later what we've learned from everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lutui. Really appreciate your time this morning. And yes, if our kids have any more questions later, you never know, you might get some emails, although actually maybe you won't, because we know how busy you are. But thank you.
Email Karen.
Yeah, email Karen, yes. We do have more questions, so shall we keep rolling? Moy, was it?
Yes.
Moy, was
Yes.
you leading this?
Yep, we can keep going. Thank you, Hina. Joe, I think you were going to say something before. Did you want to, should we wait for a question before you go, or would you like to say something?
Oh, no, that's fine. Hina covered it, and no, I just wanted to add in as I go as well, just things that Hina may have not covered. But otherwise, no, carry on. It's good. Thanks, kids.
Okay.
Oh, well, this one might be for you, Joe. So Mason, do you want room 1920? Do you want to ask your question?
Why do some people get sick from the vaccine?
So his question was, why do some people get sick from their second jab of the vaccine?
Thank you, Mason, for your question. I can add to that question, and I'm sure Hina will probably have some to add as well. So with the vaccine, Hina spoke about it earlier in terms of the research, what's going on around the world and how we can share the information. So the vaccine had been trialed on other people around the world. And from that trial and studies, we were able to see that majority of the people that had their second dose were getting more sick. And actually, I can talk about my experience as well. I had both vaccinations, both the Pfizer vaccinations, but unfortunately for me, I was a lot sicker with the first vaccine. So I had a lot of headaches. I had a lot of muscle pain on my arm where the vaccination was given. Whereas on my second vaccine, I actually didn't get any symptoms apart from just the muscle pain. So I guess to answer your question, Mason, yes, the majority of people may get a lot more sicker because of what the research has shown, but also our bodies will respond differently to the vaccine and how we would respond to it. And I'm a living example of that, because my first dose, I was a lot sicker than my second dose. Hopefully that answers the question, and I'm sure Hina or my colleagues will be able to add in more. Hopefully that answers the question. Thank you, Mason. Hina?
So I just wanted to add in what happens when you get vaccinated. So when we get sick, a lot of us might get a bit of a fever. You feel hot. Some of us might get headachy, okay? Some of us might get really sore, achy arms and muscles, and some of us get really, really tired. And that's those are signs that tell our parents that you're sick and unwell and might take you to the doctor. So when you get those symptoms of, like a fever or heart or a headache and achy muscles and stuff, that is your body's defense system. It's your cells in your body called your immune system telling you there's something not quite right here and we've got to fight infection. So the same thing happens when we get vaccinated, because when we give you a vaccine, we're trying to give you something that helps your body to recognize an infection. Okay, and so what happens is the same immune response, the same response when you feel sick and unwell when you don't have a vaccine. Okay, and so it's actually quite common when people get vaccinated to get those symptoms. So it's normal that you might get a little bit of a temperature, you might get a little bit achy arms, you might feel a bit tired. Okay, and that's because your body's doing what it's supposed to do. It's recognizing that message from the vaccine to get your body ready to be able to fight that infection if you were going to see it in person. Now, some people, just like all vaccines, some people, that reaction is really strong the first time they get the vaccine, and sometimes it's not. And when they get it the second time, they might get those same symptoms again. And you know, sometimes if you have again, or if you get sick again, you might have those same reactions. So that's why sometimes some people will get a little bit funny symptoms on the first time, some might get it on the second time. But those are all normal things. And I think the important thing to remember is that if you get a little bit of temperature, achy arms, that is probably quite normal, as long as you still want to eat and drink. But anything outside that, you still want to tell your mum and dad, or your mum and dad will probably say you not look right, and still tell your doctor or your nurse to check in that everything you're experiencing is within the normal frame that we expect. Okay.
I just add a teeny bit more. So after you've had your injection as well, kids, just like your other vaccinations when you were babies, you'll have to wait 15 to 20 minutes. And that's just to make sure you don't get any serious reactions to the vaccine. So the doctors and the nurses that are on site giving the vaccinations, they're all well trained if someone does have a reaction to the vaccine. So we do expect some people will, and majority of the people won't get any vaccination. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you. Thanks, Mason.
This is building on this. Larkham, room 18 and room 4. Larkham, are you there? Could you please ask your question?
Why is there a need for booster shots? Isn't the current vaccine strong enough to keep us safe like other vaccine we have received in the past?
Thank you for your question. Christina, did you want to say anything to start with for this one?
Oh, great question. All our other vaccines, as Dr. Lutui and as Nurse Jo has said, all the other vaccines we've had as a baby, those also need boosters. Boosters are what's a top up. Okay, so when you get a bit older, so when you have your injections before you're 5, before you come to school, then you're protected until you get to about 11 or 12. And then you have what we call a booster. That's where you have your measles, mumps, rubella. So we do have boosters as well for our other injections. But with COVID, they're also offering another booster. So after L2, that'll protect you for some time. But like what we're learning from overseas, we're also needing this top up or the booster just to help our bodies fight any infections. And knowing that COVID, as we've covered, it comes as COVID, then we've got Delta. These are called the different variants or different changes that it comes in. So that's what the booster will help. Anything new that'll change to, and then it'll be Omicron. So yeah, so that's why we're needing the booster, just so that we can make sure that it keeps you safe for any other changes that's going to come through COVID.
What about Umaisa? Back to room 1920. Can you ask your question, Umaisa, please? Does social distancing actually help stop the spread of COVID-19? Like if you're in the supermarket and someone near you has COVID?
Thanks for the question. I will pass to Jo for this one.
Yes, it does stop. The simple answer is yes, it does stop the spread of COVID-19, but especially all viruses, because we know that how it's transmitted, how it's passed on to people is when people start coughing. So when you start to cough, so little tiny germs, they spread out. And so if you're 1 or 2 meters away from someone that's been coughing, that's more likely, or you're more chances of not catching the virus. And also, not only with the distancing, but with the mask. That's why we wear the mask as well. So when you cough, you can keep your germs to yourself, like myself. See, I've got my mask here. I like to keep my germs to myself when I cough. That traps it inside, so it keeps it to myself. So yes, it does. It does stop or reduce the chances of other people getting sick because you're far away. So when you cough, your germs won't go as far to that person as well. And for extra protection, your arms, your mask, and washing your hands. So when you cough into your elbow or cough into your arm, you want to make sure you wash your hands. So the germs on my hands, when I go and open the door or no longer shaking hands because we're waving because to stop the transmission, that reduces or stops the spread of the virus. Does that help with the question or answer the question?
Thank you, Joe. And Malili, room 26.
How long does the virus stay on surface?
Thank you for the question. I think I might pass that to Hina. How long does the virus stay on a surface?
It's interesting because, as I said, we are learning as we go along in the last, I guess we're almost going to say 2 years, isn't it? And when the original COVID virus was discovered, we did worry about the virus staying on the surfaces for hours and being able to catch it off other people from your desktops and your tables and things. But as time's gone on, we've realized it's more actually from aerated, so it being particles dropped in the air rather than just on the surface desktops and whatnot. So I actually don't have the number of hours it can sit on the tabletops and things like that, but just like any other bugs and bacteria and stuff, we know that or viruses, they can stay on there for hours to even a few days. So we still recommend, what we normally would recommend is, keeping a clean work surface area, wiping down when you see spills and things like that, and good old soap and water will work just as well as any expensive granola or whatnot for most of those kind of things, to be honest. And then it's also having the hand hygiene. So if you are touching your desk and all that, then you wash your hands. Otherwise you touch your face and you'll spread things on your face. So if you're always keeping that good hand hygiene of washing your hands after touching things, then there's going to be less of an issue. So we're not too worried about the virus being on tabletops and things like that, but it's more about, it being in the air. And as we learned, and just like as Joe said, last year when we used to see people were at the supermarkets and things, we'd be telling everyone that if you were at the supermarket at this time, you need to go get tested, you need to stay at home. And this time around, we've noticed that that's changed a lot as we've learned a little bit more about the virus. And also because people are getting vaccinated. And so the more people are vaccinated, they have less amounts of virus on them to spread around compared to people who are not vaccinated. So it's kind of, I know I haven't completely answered your question. The real answer is I do not know the exact time of how long things stay on the tabletops and things like that. But we have learned that it's more of the aerated viruses that we're more concerned about when we're coughing it straight into people's faces or we're touching them with our hands and things like that.
I guess the long-term impact for us is if we all get good at those hygiene, washing our hands, coughing into our elbows or using tissues, has a benefit long-term for the future, whether it's COVID or anything else. So kids, another silver lining out of this is actually, those practices will be reinforced with you and you will remember them forever. So that's a positive. Hey, Abdullah, are you there? Room 1625 with your question.
My name is Okiti. My question is, when will COVID-19 disappear?
Oh, thank you for the question, and whakalofalahi atu to you too. That's a hard question. So who would like to take that one? When will this COVID-19 disappear?
So a little bit what we were talking about earlier when we talked about, did we have any learnings from previous diseases? So like someone asked about the 1918 sort of Spanish flu. So we knew at that time, and that was slow moving, but we also had slow communication to tell people about it, that it didn't get under control for about 2 to 3 years, to be honest, okay? And that's with no vaccine. The problem we have now is that we all like to move and there's a bigger population and we live quite close together and we can travel faster. We fly on a plane. So we can be in one country and in another country in a couple of hours. Whereas back in 1918, we moved very slowly. It took you months to go from one country to another. And so with that social distancing, you were able to stop the spread of disease because there wasn't anyone to pass it on to. But because of how we live in modern day, the virus can move from country to country very, very quickly by just hopping on a plane. And so we can't predict how long. We can only look at what's happened in the past, but we have to take into account the changes in the number of people in the world, how fast we travel, and then, but one good other tool that we have that helps us, which the 1918 didn't have, was we've got a vaccine. So we have to add it into. So we've already been living with COVID now almost 2 years. And now we're finally starting to open up to the world, and other countries are open up because we have the social distancing and washing all our hands and stuff like you guys are all doing. But we also have the option of the vaccine as well. And what we've seen in the past in countries which didn't have many of those childhood vaccines that we all know about, they still have those outbreaks in those countries. They still have a problem with those diseases like polio and hepatitis and all those kind of things. So, the vaccine and the social distancing are tools, and viruses do want to survive, and so they'll change to survive eventually. So no one at this stage can tell you how long this lasts, but what I can say is we are starting to see ourselves open up. We're learning as we're going, so we know a lot more about the virus and how to protect ourselves. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's still living with us. So it's no more about shutting out, like, well, it's living with us as more of us get vaccinated and things. It goes on for another year or two, to be honest. But I can't tell you that exactly, but it's just because that's how we've been living at the moment. And I said, we're very lucky here in New Zealand. We're surrounded by sea and we watch what happens in those big countries like America, where, they're not all separated, and we watch what happens in the UK and Europe. And so we actually learn from them as well. And so we can see what happens and how long this will last. But it's nice to get out of lockdown, isn't it, guys? It's nice to be able to get out into the shop and go and play. And that's what we all want to do. So, we're all working together to see how we can keep doing that in the future. It's so good to see so many of you at school too. Thank you.
And great news over the weekend about Auckland, the different groups within Auckland achieving the 90% mark for their vaccination. So that was great news that we're making progress day by day. I think we're just about towards the end. So if other classes have additional questions or other practitioners would like to share information, but while we're thinking about that, Loasi in room 2, could you ask your question, please?
Is there a better way to get tested besides that stick up your nose?
I love your question. Very good question. Yes, we all hate getting that brain swab all the way up your nose. So I might pass this one to Joe, and then maybe Christina afterwards if you have anything to add. Yeah.
Yep, and I'm sure Christina and Hina will definitely have advice to add as well. But unfortunately, as what I know, that is the only effective testing measure, which is that stick up your nose. Guys, kids, man, you're like me. I don't like it as well, but I need to do it. So I get it done on a weekly or fortnightly basis. So every week, every Friday, or every fortnightly Friday, I get my test done. And the reason why that is very important for me to get that done is that helps me protect other people. So if I get sick with COVID, at least I know that it's being caused by COVID, because that test will tell me. And it's so important, especially for the type of work that I do, going out to the community. going out to the community as well as other seeing other people. It's so important. So that way that making sure that my family is safe as well. So that's why that's very important to be tested. But unfortunately, I know that the government are looking at other measures to test, saliva test, other measures, only because that's not nice when it goes through your nose. But yes, so far for now, as far as I know, maybe Christina and Hina will correct me, but that's the only test so far that I know of. Thank you, Christina.
No, it's only just to support Nurse Joe. It's just that where the, you know, if you get COVID, that's where the bug sits right behind our nose. So that's why they have to go to the back of our nose to get it accurately. But we have to be grateful because, you know, in China, they actually have a test in your bottom. They do it for your bottom. So I think we all better be grateful in New Zealand that I'd rather have it in my nose than in my bottom.
At all the testing sites, they definitely have that off one. I hate it as well, the one that goes all the way up your back your nose and it feels like it's tickling your brain, as Moy said. There is another technique, but not all the testing stations know how to do it. It's probably more a GP or urgent care who know how to do the other one of testing. It still goes a little bit up your nose, but also they have to do the back of your throat. So it's still just as bad, I think, because when someone tickles the back of my throat as well. So I'm not sure which one is better. And as Joe mentioned, there is something, because you'll probably be hearing a little bit about it in the media, called a RATS test. And that's a really funny name, isn't it? And it stands for rapid antigen testing. So it is what we call a screening test that can be done, but it still involves a little swabbing up your nose, but not as far as back into your back into your throat and stuff. But those tests are only good for if there's lots of COVID in the community as a big screening test. And they may be looking at, so there's still some more stuff coming out soon, because they may look at doing it, because I know that some schools overseas, they do RAT testing to check to make sure if the kids are symptomatic or something, they can test it. So I'm not saying it's definitely coming out, we're still researching it, but it's something good to be aware of. And that's only at the front of the nose that they do the testing. And it's a screening test, which means if they look at it and you've got no symptoms and it's negative, it means it's probably a negative test. But if you get a positive test and you look well, because some people can look well and still carry the virus, then you'll have to have that horrible test to confirm it. Okay, but it is one way of screening that everyone is okay and not carrying it. Because I said, some people can get the virus and, you know, not look very sick or unwell, and then pass it on to somebody else, and then that person becomes very sick and unwell. But we can't tell which ones will be okay and which ones won't be. Okay, and that's why we have all these funny screening sort of tests. But yeah, so your mum and dad or your teachers might hear a bit more about the RATS test over the next sort of 3 to 4 weeks.
Many of our staff have weekly tests as well, and we just think the same thing, that if we might look well, but actually if one of us is symptomatic and we can find out earlier, then it will protect all of us in the long run. So yeah, team effort, isn't it? Pretty much we have got some other questions, but they kind of overlap questions that have already been asked. I don't know, maybe if classes have a desperate question, then maybe they could put it in the chat. But then just wondering if any of our experts there have anything else that they would like to share with the children in our community.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think kids, yeah, if you do have any questions, our panel are more than happy to answer those questions as well later on. If you want to send the email through, I'll pass on to each of our panelists just to have a brief final comment, and then
thank you, kids. I really appreciate all your questions. I hope we've answered it for you. I think the important thing is that, you know, we all work together to help keep ourselves safe. So keep doing all those good things you guys are doing, like washing your hands, staying home when you're sick, you know, and also, you don't have to be afraid or scared. I must tell you that when I first heard about the virus and the vaccine, I was a little bit scared as well. And so then I had to go do a lot of research and find out about the vaccine to make sure it was safe and right for me and right for my family. And so I think everyone on our panel, we've all had all our vaccines. So we haven't changed into another animal or beast or anything like that. We're all well. And so just want to thank you all. And I can't believe how smart you all are. I don't think I was that smart when I was your age, knowing how to turn on the computers and using technology and asking your fantastic questions. So thank you so much for having us. Keep asking those questions, okay? Never be afraid to question things, okay? All right, Malo, thank you.
Nothing much to add from me. Thank you so much. Lovely to see all your beautiful faces, and as well as, lovely questions. Just encourage you to keep working hard and also look forward to Christmas. But yeah, help mum and dad, and keep, like Dr. Hina said, just keep asking those questions and keep safe. So when you can have your vaccination, please have your vaccinations, but keep washing our hands and wearing our masks and keeping our social distance, and also support mum and dad and also our older family members to keep them safe. But lovely to see your beautiful faces, children. Wishing you a really Merry Christmas as well. And well done for, 100 odd days in lockdown, as well as your teachers. Well done to you guys. Thank you.
No, thank you, children. Oh man, it's so lovely to see some young, lovely faces here. So no, just like my friends and colleagues Hina and Christina said, look after yourselves, listen to your teachers, all right? Okay, so it's very important that you work hard at school, not only for your teachers, but your families, all right? So you can be in this spot, like myself, Hina, Karen. You guys will be our future, delivering this sort of stuff to other kids. I see a lot of hands there. I see a lot of doctors and nurses there in the background. So look, we're looking forward to you guys as well as you grow. There's always a career pathway in nursing and being a doctor as well. So look, from us here, God bless you all. Have a good and safe Christmas to you all. And thank you once again for having us on here as well.
Stephanie, in case you have some Samoan parents that are listening from behind, I wish to say a couple of lines in Samoan. Whawhitaitele, I love sunga Stephanie, le pule a onga, a lau tau a onga, mangele, whawhitai mule a manoa, ua o mai ai manai tamaiti, ia manai o tau whai a onga e whalongolongo mai I fō mai ma tamaitai ma li I fō mai, o so ni atu ia te o tō le wha mai. Belni a taimi ma le avanoa e mawisenga ngan Samoa, au whaafonga mai nisi o tō mātua, ia mātou te whaaololo ma au atu, ma whaamalosi au atu ia te o tō, o mai e whaile tui pui pui. Whaawale nei o le awala e pui pui ai tātou mai le COVID-19, ia e mai se fōi isi swinga o le au mai fōi, ia on sae, o leo avantu whaamatalanga ese ese, ele au whainga luenga, ia whaamalia ina ai o tō loto, whaamawhanwhana atu, mātou te whala e au atu, o e whai o tō tui whaamole mole, ia e soani fo inai whanā wā onga, ia malu pui pui lo tātou wola ma lolo ina, ia malu pui pui a. Ia saunga le mulo o tō soifua, whaonga ina mea ua talanoa tuai fō mai, I le whale, lau sanitizer, pasimoli, ia maleo langa tu mama, ia mama mea tau tonofo ma lalai, ia soifua ma lolo ina o tō mātua. ia maloloina na ia tātou whānau, ia malu pui pui e fōi le ngā luenga whai a onga, ma pule a onga o lautou a onga. Whamanui atu le Krismasi, ia te outou, whiau ngā luenga. Thank you, Stephanie. That's my piece in Samoan, encouraging the parents to support you and your school children and whānau by going out and do their vaccination. Merry Christmas and thank you.
Pawhetai au tua manuia le atua.
Oh, Taitele, Manea lau fa Samoa. Carry on your Samoan language and your Tongan language and your other languages in school and share about COVID vaccination and what you've learned about from the doctors today. So share your learning at home. Manuia o tol whānau. And I was...
Pawhetai manuia le aso.
Oi, whamanuia tele atu. Talo.
Isn't it great when the kids jump in instead of me? That's fantastic. Yeah, great that we've got this recorded as well, so we will get it out to our community. I don't know if there are whānau on, whether they did click into the link. So any whānau parents, if you have any questions, it would be great to hear from you, and they can be questions in Samoan. I'm not sure if we can do Tongan today, but yeah, ask the questions and we can get them answered. Maybe just in case we'll give them another minute. Maybe Miss Marlo, could you and your class get us going in our thank you song? Wa fa fa fetai, wa fa fetai, wa mane asa eva ai, wa tasilava oe, wa tasilava oe, ilone amoe moe.
Whawhetai lava.
Whawhetai.
Ai, manuia lava o tō.
Manuia lo aso.
Manuia Krismasi. Asoi fua.
Asoi fua.
Thank you, Stephanie and Mangane East School. I just want to, just wrapped it up by saying, a big malo aupito to all of you kids and to your teachers. As the panel have already said, we really appreciate your time and just your interest to want to know more. Is something we all encourage you to keep on doing. We wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year when you get to it. Stay safe out there and continue to, like Joe said, wash your hands and put your masks on when you can, and take care of your family, as Christina has also said. I think I'm going to pass back to Tala to close with our prayer, please. And yes, again, you've got your Karen's email in the chat. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to send them through to us in English, Tongan, whatever language. We'll find someone that can answer that question for you. Malo aupito. Thank you, Tala.
Okay. Let us pray. Father God, we thank you so much indeed for this time of the day. We have begun our day with meeting with Stephanie, the teachers and the students from Mangere East. We thank you for the opportunity that we've shared and passing on the learning and the knowledge about the COVID vaccination. We thank you for protecting us and our parents, our teachers and whānau. And thank you for the resilience that our children who have had interest and stimulation and motivation to go back to school and finish off their year safely. We thank you for the clinicians today, for their understanding and the knowledge that they have passed on to empower our community at large, not to be afraid of having their vaccination completed. We ask you to bless Stephanie and the school, the teachers who are actually looking after the well-being and the academics for our children. We ask you to bless our children with their thinking and encouraging them to ask questions in order for them to learn more about this very scared COVID vaccination that is around us today. Keep us safe, Father, in your safe hands, and take us through to Christmas holidays that we're looking forward to. Bless our children and their teachers and all of us today. Hear our prayer. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.